80, and then that was whittled down to 16. And then over the last week in Green Bay, out of those 16 national finalists, Marian made it to the Final Four and finished third nationally. So we have Marcus and Alex here from our men's bowling team. Stand up and take a bow, gentlemen. Congratulations. We're very proud of you. I'm going to make a recommendation to President Aaron Sadoff for that achievement to be recognized during graduation. So if President Sadoff, he's not here, but I will go over to his office and make that request. So once again, congratulations, and we wish you much continued success. Dianne? Oh, okay. Sister Dianne.
I think they know the difference, right? A year ago, the Mission Integration Committee was talking about how could we what could we do for Catholic intellectual tradition to help our Marian community understand it in a fuller way, and some of us had never even heard the term before, so being new. And I remember saying, well, maybe Sister Dianne Bergant would help us out if she'd be willing to give a talk. And I didn't think at that time, you just get an idea, you don't think it's going to burst into what it has. And so she's been a great gift to us. And so that's why we thought today that we would celebrate with a cake and thank her for sharing her knowledge, wisdom, and insights with us, because she's given us many. And I know her view on angels, but it seems to me that she's been an angel for us, because at the time I never thought it would burst into having people from around the country being online right now waiting for Dianne's session. So I think that's probably a little humbling, but to have that happen, but we really are grateful for her. And when we ordered the cake...
All your mistakes are known.
Pardon?
All your mistakes are known.
You do. I'll hear it. No. On the way driving the lemon cake over, I thought, I hope people don't interpret lemon in any other way, but a very positive way. Like, we didn't have a lemon at all this year, but in the uniqueness that Dianne has been, and everybody has eaten white chocolate and marble cakes, and I thought, so it was appropriate for us to honor somebody who's been uniquely blessed and privileged with who she is in her life, and she shared that with us, so we are very grateful. Thank you, Dianne.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, this will be a very quick introduction because most of us already know her, and I know she wants to start her talk, but I just want to orient anybody who's new here tonight or anybody that's online and hasn't heard Sister Dianne talk before. She comes to us with a really incredible resume of having spent an entire lifetime and career teaching biblical theology and being an expert in especially Old Testament, having taught 40 plus years?
48 in one place.
48 in one place at the Catholic Theological Union in Chicago, where so many of the country's religious orders send their people to get formation, send their seminarians, for example, to be formed and to study. And among those, there are many, many accomplished students that she has shared her wisdom with. Of note, in case you haven't already heard, she has a very particular, very famous student, former student, Robert Prevost, who became Pope Leo XIV. So we welcome her as one of our own from the sisters here in Fond du Lac, the Congregation of the Sisters of St. Agnes. We are grateful that she said yes, and we have really enjoyed all of the inspiration, as Sister Donna said. So thank you so much. Tonight's topic is the final element. It is innovation for the common good. So how is Catholic intellectual tradition here on Marian's campus and any Catholic college campus, how is innovation for the common good something that we do? And she's going to introduce the concept of interdependence. So thank you so much, Sister.
A pleasure. Thank you. She said she's so happy that I said yes. And to that I have one question. Have you ever said no to Donna Ennis? All right, we have the last intellectual value, or I had to sort of refine it a bit. But let me read it, the very last one. Innovation for the common good. The pursuit of the common good. Common good is a very technical expression, double word, but the very technical term that's used in sociology, sometimes in philosophy. It depends upon which philosophy, but certainly in sociology. And it really spans everything for everyone. The pursuit of the common good and the improvement of the conditions of life arise from the dignity of the person. That's why I've got image up there right away, and I'll explain that in a moment. Scholars of Catholic colleges and universities. And as the last week I said, I think in order to be honest, we've got to expand that. It makes it sound like the Catholic tradition, it comes from the Catholic tradition, when in fact it doesn't. It really is, and what am I talking about? The dignity of the human person. And also the values that we're talking about, innovation for the common good. Does not belong to the Catholic Church. Sometimes we think that we are the only ones who can bring forth valuable, essential values. And there was a time when we did believe that, and actually, some actually taught it. It's much broader than that. And it's also much broader than Christian values. If anyone knows anything about Hinduism, or Buddhism, you would find many of these traditions, not specifically the same theology, but certainly these values are universal values. Nor are they values of one particular culture and not another. They are the values of a culture, of a people we might be fighting with at war. They're common values. Scholars at Catholic colleges and universities, I would say scholars at reputable colleges and universities, are invited to find and understand new ways to meet human needs and solve the problems of society. This search fosters understanding and innovation that promotes human flourishing in the community. That is a beautiful value. That's a beautiful tradition, but it's too narrow. It is anthropocentric. I talked about anthropocentrism one of the first times. Comes from two Greek words, of course, anthropos, which is human, and centric, which is focused. A value that only focuses on what is human. And one would say, well, we really are the peak of creation. Well, then I would suggest, if you think that, you better read a little bit of contemporary science, because we sit in or on a relatively small planet in a very small galaxy, of which there are thousands, if not millions of galaxies, to say nothing about a galaxy within one galaxy. And we would think that we are the only thing of value. That is what the Holy Father Francis would call distorted anthropocentrism. Now, we can only value the world through our point of view, because we don't understand how other species determine anything. So to have an anthropocentric point of view is very common. It speaks about human limitation. I mean, we have only recently, and what are we, 4 million years on the planet? We have only recently come to realize that our galaxy is not the only one in the universe. And in fact, we shouldn't talk about universe, because there are universes that are packed with galaxies, that are packed, we think, with other heavenly That may not be a good word either. Certainly terrestrial, certainly cosmic realities. So sometimes we get very narrow and we think it's only us, we are the only important ones. Whether it is because humans are more important than any other creature, or that certain religious traditions are more important than any other tradition. We get very narrow, and it is from that narrowness that comes dangerous bias and prejudice. Excuse me. It's time for somebody to revise the values. They're good statements, but we should revise the values. I put 3 different things on the board, and these are the 3 concepts that I've already talked about. And sometimes people have said in this experience, 9 weeks, that's a long time for everybody, that there's been repetition. Well, the reason there's been repetition is because these things are connected. And so I want to point out the connection. First of all, it is imperative that we have a clear, unbiased, generous anthropology, that we are clear and generous and unbiased when we talk about what it means to be a human being. Now, in my lifetime, certainly the lifetime of my parents, what it means to be a human being has significantly changed. I'm not an historian, right? But it is within a short period of time that we are admitting in the United States that people of color are equal to people who are bland like I am. That's recent. It's very recent that women have been given the privilege, the right to vote in this country. That's recent, right? So in a certain sense, we're constantly learning what it means to be a human being. When we say that some people are more human than others, we got a problem, a real problem. Because that means that we don't understand who we are. Now, that is true socially, all right? That is true in many different dimensions, and it is certainly true within the biblical context. Now, what we find, let me put a parenthesis around what I just said. It's true in the biblical context, not the way the text states it, but the way we interpret it. And I will point that out in a moment. And this really is the foundation of everything. The way we understand what it means to be human is really the way, or influences the way that we act in the world. The way we understand what it means to be human is the way we treat other creation within our world. The way we treat it. The way we treat animals. The way we treat plants. The way we treat air is influenced by the way we understand what it means to be human. And I want to say, it is the way we have misinterpreted the Genesis story. Okay? I've got image here, and the image, that of course is, that's a poetic expression. What's an image? And I'm talking about an image of God. And I'm quite sure everybody has heard that expression. And probably everybody also has heard the interpretation of that expression, even though you don't come from religious background. It is so much a part of our culture, not just our religious culture. So what we have in Genesis, the Genesis story, actually, and I mentioned this, there are 2 Genesis stories of creation, and they do not agree with each other. Now, how do you deal with stories about presumably the same event and they don't agree? Either one is right and the other's wrong, or they're not historical. All right? And people, I've heard this expression several times, that it's true, it's a true story, and some of it actually happened. what is true does not always happen. Sometimes it just is. And I'll say something about that in a moment. Okay, image of God. What does the Genesis story say about the image of God? That God created all of creation, starting with the heavens and all of creation. And at the end of the creation of all of this, the wonderful things in the cosmos, it is quite cosmological. The first story. The second story is agricultural. It's not cosmological at all. It's agriculture. But the first story, God created human beings, a man and a woman, and if you look carefully at the text, they are equal. They are both created the same way. There's no way you can interpret that a man is better than a woman from that Genesis creation narrative. We find that in Genesis 1. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over all the creeping things that creep upon the earth." So God created humankind in God's image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And then he said, God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion." Now there are 5 verbs that are part of the command that human beings were told after they were created. God said, "This is what I want you to do. Subdue, have dominion." But before that, it's increase, multiply, fill the earth. But those same words are said to the animals: increase, multiply, and fill the earth. And to the fish, increase, multiply, and fill the waters. And to the birds, increase, multiply, and fill the air. So it simply means reproduce. That's what it means, reproduce. But to the man and the woman, subdue and have dominion. Now there are different ways of interpreting language. Your language, my language, biblical language. Because words usually have more than one synonym, usually have more than one meaning. It depends upon how sophisticated that language is. All right? So what does have dominion mean? Well, there's a soft way of understanding that word, and there's a hard way of understanding that word. And a lot of times, the difference is determined not by the word, but about who you're talking about. Now, we have all had teachers, and they have not all been the same. And so we can say, that person had real control in the classroom. Yeah, what does that mean? What does that mean? It could have been with smiles. It could have been with gentleness. Or it could have been with a ruler, which is seldom with smiles and gentleness. I do not ever remember any one of my teachers pulling out a ruler. And yet, there were teachers in the school that I'm thinking of that did. Locked the doors so that nobody would unannounced come in. All right? But there was one, she taught 3rd grade, and she was a sweetheart. And the 3rd graders just loved her. And 50 years later, they're still talking about her teaching 3rd grade. Now, we're all old enough in here to have similar experiences. That language, it depends upon who we're talking about. And so we add a dimension of meaning to language, and that dimension comes from an individual. So what we've got here now is 2 things, subdue and have dominion. The Hebrew word for have dominion can have a very gentle understanding. Subdue, you do a word study all of the places in the Bible where that, in the original languages, where that word appears. Never once does it have a soft meaning. In fact, it is frequently translated in English Bibles as rape. And in no way can you have a soft meaning of that word. So there is problems with that particular word. And think about who does. In a society, who has the power to subdue and have dominion? It's the leaders. And even then, you've got different categories of leaders. Are we talking about the leaders of the army? Are we talking about the leaders of the government? Are we talking about the leaders in Congress? I mean, which leaders are we talking about? So language is always, I should say it this way, language is never tight in its meaning. There's always an openness if the language is alive. Latin is, I remember learning, Latin is a dead language. Nobody speaks Latin as a mother tongue. And even that expression, mother tongue, why isn't it father tongue? I mean, there's reasons for all of this. I'm saying this not because I want to give any kind of a talk on language, but the meaning of the words. The image of God is to subdue and have dominion. And leaders are the ones who do that. And now you do a little bit of history. What kind of leaders are we talking about here? What kind of leaders did ancient Israel have? They had kings and queens. So the first story is imagining, as a metaphor, that the first man and woman were like a king and a queen. And that's not bad. That's not necessarily strict, because, again, in a very real sense, the language, those words, are softened by the way they are used in the sentence or the way they are used by the society. A society gives meaning to its language. Otherwise, it's pointless to learn such a language. So we've got subdue and have dominion, but we've got image of God, which is a tickler. That is a metaphor. A metaphor is a figure of speech. So a metaphor, the language or the image, is image of God. What is an image of God? You all know it. You may not know that you know it, but you all know what an image of God. There's a story in the Moses story about the Israelites demanding of Aaron, make us an image of God. Make us a golden calf, which is a symbolic image of how they understood their God. It's golden because they understand their God as being wealthy, their God as possessing things. It's golden because we realize that the best things we give to the most important reality in our life, and that's our God. So it would be a golden calf. It would not be a clay calf. It would be a golden calf. And it would be a calf, not an old bull. He's on the way out. A calf is on the way in. And it's male, not because male animals are more important and more valuable than female animals. It's because male animals are dispensable. You sacrifice a male animal. No one with any sense sacrifices a female animal. Because if you sacrifice a female animal, you have no progeny in the next generation. All you need is, as we say, all you need is one rooster in a hen house. All you need is one bull in the herd for reproduction. So male animals are, that's not to say they're not valuable. They are. They are then used for something else which is valuable. Generally, they are the animal that is sacrificed in order to honor God. Right? Seldom do they sacrifice a female animal. It depends upon how old it is as well. All right, so we're talking about an image of God. I'm underscoring this because it has, that metaphor, image of God, has undermined, the way we understand it, has undermined so much of our religious and also of our social understanding of what it means to be human. Now, why do I say that? Well, again, how does image of God function? Image of God is an image of God. It's a representation of God. It's a symbol of God. It's not a God. I use another metaphor to explain what image of God is, and that is a national flag. What is a national flag? All it is a piece of cloth with color and design. That's what a national flag is. But how does it function? What does it mean? I mean, it's easy to read hard books. It's extraordinarily difficult to understand them. All you got to do is know the language and you can read, but you may not understand it. So now we've got an image of God, which is a symbol of God, but it's not a God. And why do we put up an American flag? It's a big deal now. Watch television. When you see an American flag on the news, we're not talking about a parade here. Again, the circumstances, give meaning to what the symbol is. If you see American flag and it's in Gaza, it means one thing. If you see an American flag and it's in New York, it means another. Now, that's not to say they cross out each other, but you know what I'm talking about. The circumstances really do give meaning to what an image of God. So an image of God is an image, a representation, like an American flag is not America. But everything about the American flag says something about America. Even if you hang it upside down, it says something about America. So everything about a golden calf says something about what it represents, and what it represents is leadership. Leadership in the ancient world. In the ancient world, not necessarily in the contemporary world, in the ancient world. But I cannot underscore enough, it's not a God. That's the great sin that Israel always had to face. They thought they were gods. Ooh, I'm terribly sorry. I forgot to turn off my clock or my telephone. Come on, come on. It's the Pope calling. Come on. There we are. I'm terribly sorry. Here. All right. Where did I leave off? Lost my train of thought. I get so excited about this. All right, with the image of God. So I talked about the fact that it was gold. I talked about the fact that it was it was a calf, golden calf, because he's entering into strength, great strength. You want a God that's got great strength. You don't want a God that's an old man wearing out. And so all of that represented the image, which means that's how they saw their king and their queen. Because in the text, God made man and woman, male and female, he made the images. So women too are image of God. But that does not mean we are gods. And the great sin, as I said, is that Israel's constantly facing the idea that people who are to be image of God think they're gods. And what makes us think we are gods? We got more money. And we may not use the word God, but look around. We sure think we are sometimes, or some people think they are sometimes. They got more money, they got more prestige, they got more power, they got more intelligence, they got more, okay? And they've got better. better than this, better than that. It's not always good. It's not good for the mentality of a people to always think they're better than everybody else. I leave that up to your own conversation or reflection on where we are in the world. You know, so much of this is collapsing, and we don't know what to do. So, image of God. Now, how have we human beings shown, you and I, how have we shown we think we are gods? We think we are as powerful as God. We think we are as intelligent as God. How have we done that? Number one, by the way we interact with each other. That's how we show whether or not we think we're better than everybody else. The way you interact with each other. Whether the notion of image of God ever rises in your mind at all. But you know people who are like that. And you know when you are. I sure know when I am. Nobody else has to know. But you know you're not a God. You are an image of God. That is a great privilege, that we represent God. That as I stand before you, it must be something about my life, the way I live my life, the way I interact with people, that must show everyone else what I think about God. Whether or not I'm kind, or am I overly sophisticated, or arrogant, or you are. I can only speak about myself. I only have the right to speak of myself, because if I tell you that you're arrogant, that's pretty arrogant, as you know. But you know what I'm talking about, whether it be arrogant. It's that we manifest to God. We're all like a golden calf, in a certain sense, that we want to give what is best to that which is the best, and that's what God is, the all best. However you use language to speak about God. The way we interact with each other tells whoever is around what we think about God, believe it or not. The way you and I use the world that God has not given to us. Where in the religious tradition does that say that God gave us the world? If it says it, and it doesn't, all right, it is implied. You have the world, subdue and have dominion. But how are you going to have dominion? Are you going to be like the teacher who locks her door with the ruler inside? Or are you going to be the one who 30 years later remembers their third grade teacher with great love and sensitivity? And we've all had teachers, so I can use that. How are you going to speak to the world? What are you going to say to the world? Without saying a word. What are you going to manifest? That's image of God. But look what we have done. I think I told this story before, but I'll tell it again. Several years ago on television, the television program, The A-Team, and Mr. T, who's on the A-Team, the guy that wears all the gold, and that's fine, okay? Except he bought a house, he bought a mansion in a northern suburb, Kenilworth, I think it was, in the northern suburb of Chicago. And he wanted to tear down the mansion that was on the land and build a bigger one. And he had a right, it was his. He bought it, okay? But he also cut down the trees, and his property was like on a ledge overlooking Lake Michigan. Now you cut down the trees, and you don't have anything holding the ground down. And just get a good rainstorm, and the ground washes away. So his neighbors were up in arms. And he said, I can do what I want with my land. I bought it, it's mine. And he was right, but he was wrong. Or the law was wrong. The law should not have allowed him to do that. But we in the United States are so individualistic in our understanding of what it means to be image of God that sometimes our laws are not helpful. Laws are not only supposed to tell people what to do, but also tell them what not to do. That's just an example. But you and I are now suffering the consequences in terms of global warming, in terms of pesticide. I can remember years ago, and I don't remember what year, and if anybody does, let me know, when Love Canal in New York was a housing development, if I'm not mistaken. I was just a young nun, a housing development in New York. And they had to move everybody out of this housing development because the land was toxic. And people were dying because the land was toxic. I'd be willing to bet you couldn't even count how many love canals there are in the United States today, where the land is toxic. And nothing is done about it. Then for a while there was a movie, Julia Roberts was in one, Aaron Brockovich. Another one about what we have done. That shows we think we're God. We think that the land and the sky has been given to us to do with what we want. And it hasn't. I once asked a friend of mine, a priest, how often does anybody come into confession and confess sins against the land, sins against the sky, of the air? He says, it's never happened yet. People don't see that's sinful. That is sin. We are destroying something that's not ours. That's one thing. All right? That's part of the interconnectedness. We are dependent on the natural world. We are dependent on it. We cannot survive without the natural world. Other animals can. Again, a story I've already told, I'll tell it again. Several years ago, everything happened several years ago, I guess. But several years ago, there was an epidemic of wolves in Yellowstone National Park. An epidemic of wolves. There was a problem with wolves. Who had the problem? The tourists. And we know how important the tourists are. So they got rid of all the wolves. And without a long period of time, all of a sudden, the elk population exploded. And so they realized what we have to do in order to take care of that is bring back the wolves. And so they did, and then it was equalized, if that's the word to use. So again, we think it's ours to do with what we want. It's not ours. First of all, it's not ours. It is God's, and it has been entrusted to us. Stewardship is a good word to use instead of subdue and have dominion. Stewardship. And if we think it is ours to do with what we have, look at what previous generations have left for you. That's the world into which you step. With great challenges, but you have abilities as well. But does your generation realize the responsibility? Does my generation realize? And we've been living, with the consequences of our foolishness and our sinfulness. Again, with COVID, I remember there was, and that's not so long ago, but so something we all remember. I remember that there was a story that was shown. The air in San Francisco, or was it Los Angeles, that was clear. Clear. It only took a couple of weeks when they opened it up ago. It was clear because everybody was inside. Nobody was outside polluting the land. And in that same report, in the channels or canals in Venice, You could see the bottom of the canal. Otherwise, it's all garbaged. But everybody was inside, afraid, and appropriately so, afraid that they're going to suffer from COVID. And the earth refurbished itself. It refurbished itself. So it can do it, but we can do it too. We can refurbish ourselves. We are changing. And I don't know, how much evolutionary science you know, or you are interested in. But we are constantly in an evolutionary movement. We are the last step in certain kinds of evolutionary development. I think they say it's Julian Huxley who said, "We are the natural world reflecting on itself." You and I are the natural world. We are the result of evolution. And we're still going through that process. So that's the life force within us. But now it's not going to change. I doubt whether we're going to, lose some of our fingers because we don't need them anymore. All you need is the index finger and know how to push a button. Then we can live that way for a long time. We don't need 5 fingers anymore. It'd be hard to play the piano, but all you need is the index finger, for some of the activities that we have, or your voice. You activate your voice. I remember the first time somebody at the CTU got a computer. And actually, the faculty got computers from the administration, but we had to share them. So 2 people had a use of a computer. But my computer, or the one that I could use, was in somebody else's office, so she used it more than I did. But it was very interesting. She said, "Why are you going to get your own?" "Dummy, right here, dummy." And I said, "I'll get a computer when all you have to do is talk and it types by itself." And how many years did it take before we got them? Without my thinking, I get it. I just didn't want to type. I want a computer that does the typing now. And now we got AI, and you got to be careful, it'll just, type you out of business. And that's the big thing that we're not worried about. Well, yes, worried sometimes. But that's a big thing that we talk about now is AI. And that probably is understood as being, an evolutionary move, because AI does not come out of the ground. It comes out of, the intelligence, human intelligence. And all of this, friends, all of this comes under the rubric image of God. We can do marvelous things, and we can be killed by a mosquito. That's how strong we are. That's how interesting we are. The stuff, AI is interesting and frightening at the same time. And why is it frightening? Because we really don't know what to do with it. We know what we'd like to do with it, but we don't know much about it anymore as a people. But you watch. Human bias and human pride and arrogance is going to challenge that. And we're going to have to learn how to make sure that those of us, or we at certain times in our lives, do not think we are God. Do not think that we can do anything we want to do. We are not God. We are an image of God. We are a magnificent image of God. We write poetry. We can inspire people. We can love people. We can reshape personalities simply by loving them, by caring for them. That's magnificent. But we can also bomb them. And we've learned how to bomb, not up close, thousands of miles away. We know how to destroy somebody's home or somebody's country. That's what we are. We have magnificent opportunities for good and magnificent opportunities for evil against ourselves and against our world. We have the power, some would say, we have the power to destroy our world. We have destroyed some already, parts of it already. Again, by the way, we have destroyed some of, working through the powers of nature, how we have destroyed some. Now, thinking about that, oh, here it is. Let me read this again and see for yourself what's lacking. What's here is good, but what is lacking? The pursuit of the common good. Common good means common good. Common good is not simply taxation, fair taxation in the United States. That's good. But common good also includes food in Gaza or food in Ukraine. All of a sudden, it's almost as if Ukraine doesn't exist anymore. It's in our lives day in and day out, and then it's gone, and we forget about it. We forget about it. Pursuit of the common good. Do we pursue the common good? Or do we only pursue the good of the United States, which I love? Or the good of Marian College, which I love? Or the good of the Sisters of St. Agnes, which I love? But do we only pursue their good, or do we pursue the common good? We pursue the common good by we inform ourselves before we vote, if we even vote. All right? And little things become big things. There's no such thing as an act of goodness and charity that's too small. Only thinking that's too small. Pursuit of the common good and the improvement of the conditions of life arise from the dignity of the person. Where's the earth in that? Where are the animals in that? Pursuing the common good means that we care for our environment, not simply because we need it in order to survive, but because it doesn't belong to us. And we need it certainly so that we can be healthy. Certainly. But that's not the primary reason. It's not ours. It is ours to the extent we are responsible for it. To that extent, yeah. But imagine, we have been entrusted with the common good of all the world, you and I, but the common good and also with the good of the natural world. We have been entrusted with that. That says something about how, to the extent that God trusts us with God's world. The dignity of the human person, of every human person, even those who don't talk the same way as we do, who don't dance or dress the way we do, who paint their face in a different way. These are people with the same kind of intelligence, the same kind of care for, responsibility to care for. Scholars at Catholic colleges and universities, I say scholars at colleges and universities, are invited to find and understand new ways to meet human needs. Why limit it to human? That's anthropocentric. Understand new ways to meet needs. To meet needs. Programs that teach all of us how to care, for the earth. What to do with smog, or what to do so we don't have smog, to the extent we can. And we're fighting what looks to be a losing battle when some people don't even believe there is such a thing as climate change. Meet human needs and solve the problems of society. Society's too narrow. We got to think bigger than society. The world, the animals, the earth, the cosmos. This research fosters understanding and innovation that promotes human flourishing. Why just human flourishing? I mean, these are good, but you can tell they come from another era of thinking and appreciating the responsibility of care for the earth. So, anybody would like to revise them? Who knows what people are going to do when they get out of this institution? They've got to have come from somewhere. The ones, who work with the cosmos, the ones who work with cleaning up the air or the sea. Why couldn't somebody from Marian get that job or that profession or that life commitment? The ones to whom we are indebted for their care of the world of which we are all a part, they've got to come from somewhere. Why not Marian? This search fosters understanding and innovation that promotes human flourishing in the community. Gotta watch my time. All right, so I've talked about an image of God and interconnectedness. And I said something about independent. The examples that I gave with the wolf and with the elk, that shows that in a very real sense, we don't need human beings always, to solve our problems. Sometimes all we've got to do is move away from it. And the earth cleanses itself. Now, it may take hundreds of years, or, depending about what kind of cleansing, thousands of years. But I think those two examples that I gave show that the earth can clean itself up if you give it a chance, at least immediate. You give it a chance. So that's where the independent comes in. Now, I've got a couple of minutes, and I want to talk about the idea of mission. There is a book, it may be in your library, I'm not sure if it is or not. The author's name is Christopher Wright. Christopher White. W-I-T-E, I believe is the name. Anyway, the title of the book is The Mission of God. We use that word an awful lot. You use it at Marian in your documents. We use it in the congregation. We talk about our mission this and our mission that. Strictly speaking, it's not our mission. The theology it's God's mission. And the thesis of the book, I'll talk about very briefly the thesis of the book, and then point to a couple of biblical passages. The thesis of the book is in the ancient world. Now, this is ancient Israelite thinking. I mean, everything you got in the Old Testament is ancient Israelite thinking, all right? I mean, God did not drop down a scroll with all this written out. And that's another thing, drop down. The next time, I'm going to spoil it. The next time you go to a sports game and you make a magnificent goal, don't look up to heaven. There's nothing up there except wood. But people look up, and I'm thinking, give me a break. They're still operating under the idea that heaven is up there, and earth is here, and hell is further down. That's ancient myth. And ask the very first astronaut was a cosmonaut. It was a Russian. And he was asked, I think, either he was asked or he said, I looked and when he was up there and he couldn't see anything. What he's talking about, he couldn't find heaven. And I'm thinking, the man is brilliant because he's a cosmonaut. Look how he knows science. And he thinks heaven is up there. Do you know where heaven is? Right here. Right here. Heaven is where we are. Heaven is where we meet God. And that's what we do, or we try to do every day of our life. We try to meet God. So anyway, in ancient Israel, there were many gods. except for Israel, they had one God. Usually people had many gods, but Israel had one God. And Israel made this claim that our God is the only true God. Our God is the only God that there is. Everything else, is human, but not our God. All right? And what God wanted was that the whole world would know that message. It's a very simple message. There is but one God, and it's our God. But it's our God who wants to be known and loved by everyone. And so he chose this is the theme of the book. He chose the Israelite people to be the people who will announce this to the world. And you look at the theology of Israel, you look at the Old Testament, and that's precisely what it is. That there is the Old Testament, if it says anything, it says everything in that one concept. There is but one God, and that God is the God Yahweh, and all people should worship Yahweh. That's the fundamental message of the Old Testament. All right? But there was one Jewish person who was the epitome of the Jewish people, and that was Jesus. And if you look carefully at the New Testament, it is very clear that Jesus carries out the mission of God. Because my Father, did this, and I do this for my Father. It's the mission of God. And one of the last things that Jesus did on earth was was to give that mission back to his own disciples. Go out and preach the gospel. That's the mission. So the message is of the mission. There is but one God, and that God is a God for all people. That God loves all people, and all people should return God's love. And in a certain sense, and I don't want to make light of it, and they lived happily ever after. That's the mission of God, which became the mission of Jesus, which became the mission of the apostles, which is our mission. You and I, we've got that same thing. We are to announce to the world. If need be, stand on the housetop. Don't have to, but if need be, stand on the house and announce to the world by the way you live, by the way you interact with each other, by the way you are honest, by the way you are dependable, by the way you are willing to forgive people who may have offended you, even seriously. That's all you have to do, but that's what you have been called to do. That's your mission in life. That's my mission in life. That's everyone's mission in life. And it is not always easy. It's not always easy. But we can rise to the occasion. So when we talk about mission then, it really is the end of this story. This story begins with an understanding of what it really means to be human. And then how are we to live it out? And the answer would be, the way you live it out is the way you are faithful to your mission. It would seem to me that there are people in this room, I want to say all, but I don't know, but there are people in this room who really are committed to make this world better, to make the lives of the people that we know and love and meet better. That's the same mission. You make it better. We want it to be better. The question is, how do we do it? And the answer is you go to Marian College. I say that facetiously, but that's precisely the truth. That's the mission of the school, to present before you opportunities to do the mission of God. And these opportunities would be able to be accomplished in your life choice. Otherwise, why make a life choice if you know you're going to fail at it? And the question is not simply to be successful and make a lot of money. Now, I realize it's easy for somebody in religious vows to talk about not being committed to making a lot of money. But let me assure you, I'm not poor. Let me assure you, I'm cared for. Let me assure you that sometimes I struggle with the same thing that you do. And that is, what am I supposed to do now? How come life is as hard as it is? This is not what I signed up for. I mean, all those kinds of questions that anybody asks, everybody asks. And someplace in there, someplace within your mind and heart, the answer to those questions are, what does God want from me? What does God want from me? Why do you want what it is you want? Why do you want to make the contribution that you want to make? And the answer to that is, in order to serve, in order to make sure that someplace, wherever you are doing whatever it is you're going to be doing, the way you do it is going to make a difference in somebody's life, make the world better, and make the goodness of God seen. Whether people know that's what they see or not, they may simply see you as somebody who's generous. But it is God's generosity working through you. So, are there any questions? I don't know.
Sister Dianne Bergant.
Yes.
So my question is, you were talking about heaven is in the mind. And I was thinking that there is now scientific and medical research where the map of the biological brain that all of us now possess, maybe 50, 60 years hence, we would be able to possess an identical synthetic copy of it.
Yeah.
And the implication there would be the biological brain usually dies. It comes to an end at some point. We just don't know when.
You're talking about the actual material,
Yep, the biological brain.
not
Yep.
the function of it, which is
No,
non-material.
just the material of it, the biological material. Well, the synthetic copy, it won't die and it will live forever. So my question to you is, as that science and medical knowledge advances and we ultimately get to that point, how should we think about heaven in the mind, in your view?
I have no idea. I serious, I'm not trying to get out of it. But I think that is the big wow of this generation. And by that I don't mean, chronological, that we're living in now. I mean, that's the direction that evolution is going into. Evolution is not going into changing the physical body, other than in that way. The whole question about consciousness. I mean, that's the area. What is consciousness? How do we use it? How do we train it? I don't even know what kind of questions to ask. And I think that for most of us, we don't know what kind of questions to ask to answer your question, because it is so different. We're really going through an evolutionary change with AI. And that's what makes it so exciting and also so terrifying. I mean, is AI going to be what destroys us? Or is AI going to be what moves us into another generation of evolution? We don't know at this particular point. And that's why it's so important to have people who question it and don't just, jump on the train, to get involved in it. But other than that, I really don't know how to answer that question. what's going to happen to the school system? You know? But you're right. If the synthetic mind, and even that word synthetic, I mean, I know that, you know, that's the word that is frequently used, but we need a whole new vocabulary to talk about it as well. And I realize that particularly in an institution of learning, I mean, you got to be ready for those kinds of questions, you know, in order to search them out, in order to be protected and to protect others from what can destroy them. But it's not the first time that we as a race have come across something that completely changes, you know, how we understand what it means to be human in society. Because it's always in society. It's never alone. It's always in society. At least that's the way it's always been. So more than that, I can't say. Maybe I should ask you. Should I?
Sure.
What do you think of it?
Well, I think about it like nuclear energy, and it goes to your comment, it can advance. I think about it like nuclear energy.
Yeah.
It can advance and it can destroy, and at least at this juncture of human history, we decided not to unleash another atomic explosion
Yeah.
in anger, but we are reconsidering ways to make it more productive with respect to energy. So I think it's going to occur, and I think you hit the nail on the head. How is it that, as far as public policy is concerned, through laws, at least in part, and ethics as well, is that as it arrives, how it ought to be regulated, and are there events that we say as a society, it's a no-go? You
Yeah.
simply can't do that.
That's right, yeah. That's how I see it as well.
The quote that came to my mind as you guys were talking about that is heaven in the mind and so forth. There's a quote from St. Therese of Lisieux, I think, where she says something like, "The world is thy ship and not thy home." And
Say that again?
the world is thy ship and not thy home.
Oh, okay.
Meaning, you know, to invite us all to consider this is a journey, you know, not like you said that it's got a destination in the sky, but that it takes us somewhere else. I think I've heard the phrase somehow else. Like it's not a place, it's a different way of being, to be in union with God maybe.
Yeah.
But just before people leave, I just wanted to point this out. A student just showed this to me. This is the Catholic Study Bible. She's chuckling, she knows what's coming. On the back of the Catholic Study Bible, and this has probably been used all over everywhere, the #1 contributor of the notes of the Catholic Study Bible happens to be Sister Dianne Bergant. So just to give context to exactly, and she's probably going to be very humble about it, but that doesn't come about in a small way. That's an enormous credit to the professional and dedicated career that you had in studying Scripture. So if anybody wants to see this, check it out. Thank you, Sister.
That's very kind of you, and I'm not going to, you know, demur or anything. But for your benefit, that is an example of being in the right place at the right time. Don't ever minimize being in the right place at the right time. I happen to know the publishers, and I happen to know other people. A Catholic Theological Union opened many doors for me. Now, when doors are opened, you got to walk across them. I'll take credit for that. But I would never have gotten into that, you know, and I did the commentary on the wisdom traditions, you know, in there. But it's because I was at the right time at the right place at the right time.
Beautiful.
So I say that to students. Don't ever minimize that. Sometimes that's why good things happen to you.
She's got biblical advice and life advice. Don't miss out. All right, thank you, Sister.
Yes. Anyone else?
Anybody else?
There's cake, remember?
Yes. All right, so one announcement and then, two announcements and then a final comment. So just so you know, that CSA, USA 250, there's going to be over at the Prairie Theater, which is old UW Fond du Lac campus, there's going to be a speaker series, and the Forum to a More Perfect Union, Division, and Unity in the U.S. at 250. And as Sister Dianne said, the United States of America is an amazing, amazing place that, and I loved your analogy of a flag because it represents what people put to that representation. And when I was in the military, I didn't fight for the flag, I fought for the idea and the concepts of that. But to celebrate America at 250, this is going to be a really interesting opportunity to see a perspective of love, acceptance, and responsibility. So on April 23rd, we have Janie Geske, former Justice of Wisconsin Supreme Court. September 17th, our very own Sister Dianne Bergant. Then on October 22nd, Alexa Merrill will share about Dignity Index. So keep this on your front page, and there's some exciting things coming on. Another thing about Marian University, Sister Diane's not done yet. She has one final thing for the university for the academic year of 2025 and 26. She will be our commencement speaker. So, come on out, and we're going to have, and she said the limit for the commencement is 10 to 15, maybe 20 minutes. She goes, I'll do what I want. No, I didn't hear that, no. But whatever it is, it's going to be engaging, it's going to be amazing. And one of the things that I just want to take away from, and thank you for, is when you said something about Marian University. You're here, and this is the best place to become best for the world and to really embrace what it means to be loved and to understand about one God and to understand about how we should treat people and be the best for the earth, be the best for our families, be all that. But the one thing about being at Marian University, which I've learned all in my life, is we're so much better together. And all the faculty, the staff, the students, the trustees, and the sisters are dedicated to make this an opportunity for all of you. If you're sitting in here because maybe you had to come for a class, or maybe you thought it was good, take something from here and start to be more and more decent to each other. Start to do this together, because it's so much easier when you have a community that respects and finds values and actually works hard, not only to be great bowlers, but to bring a lot of pride to Marian University because of that. So thank you, everybody, for being here. But one more time for Sister Dianne. An absolute national treasure, and if this is not the begin or just the end, this is just the beginning. So God bless everybody, and let's go Sabres, class of 2026. Wah!
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh,
All right.
there. Well, I'll tell you, I thought one of the things I thought is that you were saying is our biggest decision is how long we want to be here. You know, like, because if at the end I figure all this out, it's like, I'm going to make a lot less. But if so, not enough there,